The money illusion: why the Federal Reserve owes nothing and you owe everything. One. The question that breaks the system. The Federal Reserve prints trillions of dollars, numbers on a screen, backed by nothing, owed to no one. But every bill in your wallet says Federal Reserve note. A note is a debt instrument. So if every dollar is debt, who is it owed to? The answer exposes the architecture of modern finance. The Fed owes no one. But everyone owes the Fed. Footnote. This section introduces the paradox of fiat money as a debt-based instrument owed upward to the issuer, not laterally among citizens. 2. The private cartel behind the curtain. Contrary to public belief, the Federal Reserve is not part of the U.S. government. It's a hybrid system, public in appearance, private in ownership. 12 regional reserve banks operate as private corporations. Their shareholders are the very banks they regulate: J.P. Morgan Chase, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley. They receive a guaranteed 6% annual dividend by law before the U.S. Treasury gets a cent. The Board of Governors in Washington offers a veneer of oversight, but the money machine runs in New York, where private banks literally own the spigot. Footnote. This section outlines the legal structure of the Federal Reserve System and its private shareholder model codified by the 1913 Federal Reserve Act. 3. How money is actually created. Here's the sequence that quietly rules the world. 1. Congress spends more than it collects. 2. The Treasury issues bonds, IOUs promising repayment with interest. 3. The Federal Reserve buys those bonds by creating dollars from nothing, typing them into existence. 4. The Treasury's account fills with new money. The Fed now holds the bonds as assets. No gold moved. No taxpayer funded it. Yet the government now owes principal plus interest to the Fed, interest paid with real labor, real taxes, real time. Footnote. This section explains open market operations as the mechanism through which base money is created via debt issuance. 4. The circular trap. Every dollar in circulation is created through debt. Pay off the debt, and the dollars disappear. The only way to keep money in existence is to keep borrowing. That's why the national debt has risen every year since 1913, because it must. The system mathematically requires perpetual debt growth to sustain the money supply. Debt isn't a flaw, it's the engine. Footnote. This section describes debt-based monetary expansion and the impossibility of extinguishing the national debt without collapsing liquidity. 5. Interest, the hidden tax. When the government pays interest on its bonds, that money comes from taxes. You work. You earn. The Treasury siphons part of it to the Fed. The Fed distributes dividends to its member banks and remits leftovers to the Treasury. In 2023, the Fed earned roughly $150 billion in interest on bonds purchased with money created from nothing. You fund that return through your paycheck. Footnote. This section details how federal interest payments constitute a transfer of taxpayer wealth to the banking system via the Fed's portfolio income. 6. Debt as permanent design. The trap deepens. When the Fed creates $500 billion in principal, the interest, say 3%, or $15 billion, is not created. Those dollars don't exist yet. They can only appear if someone else goes into debt. Thus, to pay interest on old money, new debt must always be born. The total debt grows faster than the total money supply, an exponential treadmill by design. Footnote. This section highlights structural insolvency within an interest-bearing fiat system requiring infinite expansion. 7. The power transfer of 1913. Before the Federal Reserve Act, the U.S. government could issue money directly. After 1913, it could only borrow money, at interest, from a privately controlled central bank. That single legislative act transferred the power to create currency from the people's representatives to a consortium of private financiers. It was the quietest coup in economic history. Footnote. This section places the Federal Reserve Act within the broader context of monetary sovereignty and legislative delegation. 8. The presidents who challenged the machine. Andrew Jackson called central banking a den of vipers and paid off the national debt, briefly, before the economy imploded from lack of new credit. Lincoln issued greenbacks backed by the Treasury. Kennedy tried silver certificates under Executive Order 11,110. Both sought to restore government control over money creation. Both died in office. History may not repeat, but it certainly rhymes. Footnote. This section recounts historical attempts to reassert public money issuance and their political consequences. 9. The final answer. So, who does the Federal Reserve owe? No one. Who owes the Federal Reserve? Everyone. The Fed conjures money from nothing, lends it to the government, collects interest funded by taxpayers, and distributes profits to the banks that own it. Your dollars are not assets, they are receipts for someone else's debt. The more dollars exist, the more debt exists. And the interest on that debt flows upward, forever. Footnote. This section resolves the opening paradox, showing that debt issuance is the mechanism of monetary control and wealth extraction. 10. The takeaway. Money isn't wealth, it's obligation. The issuer of money sits above the law of owing. Everyone else sits below it. Understanding that is the first step toward reclaiming economic sovereignty. Because the greatest illusion of modern life is not that the Fed prints money from nothing. It's that you believe you're free while paying interest on its existence. Footnote. This final section concludes with the moral and structural implications of a debt-based currency system for individual sovereignty.